as Chairman Tolberg said, this was a devastating event. For those of us who make our way in the power industry, especially devastating, because I think the people who work for all the various companies, whatever segment they're in the electric industry, understand that power is essential to civilization. It's essential to our ability to live our everyday lives in the modern world. And the extent of the outages that we will discuss during the presentation that we saw last week, that ERCOT ordered in order to preserve the integrity of the system so that we could control an incredibly difficult situation and bring us back to a place today where we have power and our markets are operating in the way they were before the emergency event. There's no question those are tremendous, terrible impacts, including loss of life, and affected our families and our friends here at ERCOT, and I know in the industry as well as so many Texans. So, we regret that this event took the time it did to resolve, and in this presentation we'll try to explain what we saw. And I want to emphasize what ERCOT wants to do today, what ERCOT wants to do at the legislative hearings tomorrow and going forward is to provide explanation, not excuses, provide data with the goal of keeping the grid secure. That ultimate goal, has to take into account that what we saw here required actions that, while consistent with the practice of keeping us out of a blackout, consistent with maintaining our ability to bring the power system back to a place where we could provide normal services as we have today. There's public safety issues we have to take into account. Everyone has to look at every aspect of this event, and as I've talked to policymakers, leadership in Texas, I think there is a real commitment to look at every aspect of this event, not just one part, not just another, because there were so many parts of this that we don't want to see happen again. So we want to be a part of that review, and again, plan to provide information and data to that extent. The data we'll provide today, if you could go to the next slide, the data we'll provide today, we have gathered, if you go to the next slide, over the past week as the event concluded. That data will continue to be supplemented. If you could go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. That data will continue to be supplemented, but we have to tell you some of the numbers that we have in this presentation could change. We don't think materially that the overall story of what happened last week we don't see as materially changing, but we'll get additional information from market participants into our system. We have requests for information outstanding to market participants in the electric industry. There will be post-event analysis that will examine every second of this event. And so as the data here, we stand behind it. We believe it's very solid and tells the story of what occurred last week. But just want to note that if you see a different number in a column as we continue to gather data, that's a possibility. So just wanted to note that for the future. Now, I want to really start with, before we go into the events of last week, to start with sort of a level set about ERCOT. I think a lot of people became aware of ERCOT for the first time, unfortunately, last week, when we had to order the rotating and then controlled, we call them outages, over the course of the week. And if you go to the next slide, I want to give just a little background about ERCOT. We were founded in 1970. We're a nonprofit corporation, Texas nonprofit corporation. There are 7 market segments represented here on this board, as well as in all of our activities. As you can see on the slide, they represent consumers, they represent producers, generators, power marketers, municipal and cooperative utilities, as well as investor-owned utilities. So ERCOT is constructed by the legislature to represent consumers and producers in the way that we implement policy for this marketplace. ERCOT really became the entity that we operate as today after the passage of Senate Bill 7 about 20 years ago. And the legislature has enacted laws that govern all of the activities of ERCOT, whether how we manage grid issues, market issues, or the corporation and its budget. The Public Utility Commission of Texas has complete authority over ERCOT's finances, our budgets, our operations. There's oversight, of course, by the legislature. The commission approves our bylaws that this board operates under. And this board is composed in statute, in Texas law, to have 5 unaffiliated directors. Those are people who are independent from ERCOT market participants. Those board members must be approved by the PUC for 3-year terms for a maximum of 9 years on the board if they serve that long. In addition, there are 8 directors for each that are elected annually by the market segments. As Ms. Anasetti-Para said, the segments elect their directors to represent their part of the industry, and those each serve 1-year terms. Then representing commercial and residential consumers is the Office of Public Utility Counsel. Public Counsel Laurie Kobos is on our board, as well as myself, the Chief Executive Officer, and PUC Chairman, Chairman Walker, as a non-voting member of this board. To go to the next slide, the role that ERCOT plays in the Texas electric market is as outlined in the state law, that is Public Utility Regulatory Act, Section 39-151, is system reliability, facilitating wholesale competitive markets, making sure there is open access to transmission for various generators who want to be on our system, and facilitating a competitive retail market. Now, what do those things mean practically? On the electric reliability side, we serve, as Chairman Toller already mentioned, as sort of an air traffic controller. We don't own generation or transmission, but we are seeing the entire system and managing the entire ERCOT system in the sense of letting transmission and generation entities know when they need to run and when they need to stop running to maintain grid reliability. And that is something that we're doing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in all conditions. The competitive market components of ERCOT, we act as a billing, collections, payment agent. The money that goes through the market flows through ERCOT to the market participants, and we serve that billing and payment agent function. On the competitive retail market, we do not participate in the competitive retail market. There are no customers served by ERCOT in Texas. Our main process is to manage switching by customers between retail electric providers. We manage the flow of power on a system that serves about 26 million Texans. That's about 90% of the state's electric load or demand, about 75% of the land mass, but about 90% of the demand. There's over 680 generating units in the system and over 46,500 miles of transmission lines that we're overseeing 24/7 every day. And this next item, probably the most fundamental job that ERCOT has, is to maintain the electric system at the frequency of 60 hertz. Now, what does that mean? An electric system has to keep supply and demand in very close balance at all times. While we're now seeing some developments of energy storage, for the most part, electricity has to be produced and consumed simultaneously. It is not kept in inventory. And if the balance of supply and demand get too far away from one another, that's when you can have the danger of blackouts. And when we say a blackout, we mean a blackout that could keep the system down for an indeterminate amount of time. And we'll talk more about the details of how that process functioned during the emergency last week. But that fundamental role of keeping the system balanced at 60 hertz so we maintain its security is probably the number one job. On the financial side, on the wholesale market, you'll hear from some of our folks today about the financial impacts of what we're seeing out of the emergency. We provide settlement services for nearly 8 million, or rather, we provide settlement services for the wholesale market, and then retail switching management for about 8 million competitive choice customers. All right. The next slide, I want to focus on some things ERCOT does not do. As there's been a lot of discussion during the event of what ERCOT is doing. We need to be clear that we do not own, operate, or have any enforcement authority over any electric generation facilities or any electric transmission or distribution lines or substations. We are working every day, 24/7, with the owners of those resources to oversee and manage what is going on the overall grid. But we don't own those assets or control them. As I said, we don't send bills for retail electric service to residences or businesses. We're not in the business of providing power to end users. And we don't control or operate electric service to local areas, to neighborhoods or individual premises. The poles and wires companies, transmission and distribution companies provide those services to their customers. We don't establish pricing or rates for retail electric customers. There are market structures in place that policymakers have chosen, and we need to implement in pretty sophisticated computer systems to manage the large amount of transactions that go through, but we're not setting prices. And we don't have any direct relationship with customers or direct customer relationships with the public, because we are dealing primarily with, in the wholesale market, the generators and the transmission companies, and working with them to keep the grid secure. On the next slide, just on issues of sort of ERCOT governance and how we're managed. Our budget is approved by the board and the PUC on a biennial basis every 2 years. We're funded by a system administration fee. That fee is currently 55.5 cents per megawatt hour. We note here 1 megawatt of electricity produces power for about 200 Texas homes during peak demand. And the average cost that is ultimately passed along we bill this to wholesale participants. And that, when that's passed along, it averages out to about $7 a year for residential households. And again, we don't set consumer rates. Those are set either by regulators or by the companies that sell the services, both for generation and for transmission. So next slide, I want to just to sort of wrap up this overview, show you, where the power in Texas comes from. We have a very balanced portfolio of generation resources on our system. It is listed here, and natural gas leads the way with over 47% of the installed capacity to produce power in Texas. We have coal on the system. We have nuclear plants, a lot of wind power, and an emerging amount of solar, a utility-scale solar, the large solar farms that provide power. So all of those different types of generation are feeding into the system, and then they're traveling across those 46,500 miles of transmission lines to get out to substations and out to the ultimate customers. Now I want to go into the review of the emergency events of last week. So you can go to the next slide. So, as forecast, we saw the storm coming, and we began to take actions according to our procedures during the week of February 8th to assist generation and transmission companies in their readiness, as well as preparing ourselves to manage an event that we saw as an extreme event. We expected to go on for some time. We canceled transmission outages. That affected over 1,600 transmission devices. We delayed other outages, and what we mean here is, transmission companies want to do maintenance on their lines. They need to request those outages from us to be sure that if that line is out, we can still maintain the system reliably. That is a constant part of our process to manage those outages on the system, both of generation and transmission. Transmission providers stepped up and deferred those outages during this time because we knew that we were going to have extraordinary demand on the system. And we reviewed planned generation outages and to see if anyone could potentially return. There was not a whole lot of planned outages that did not return. Most of the generation saw what everyone else was seeing on the system, that we had a very high demand event coming, and wanted their units to be ready to run as much as possible during that time to support the system. And we noted potential of up to 11,100 megawatts of forced outages due to gas restrictions. We now receive communications from our generators on their gas company and fuel resources. And so we were anticipating and had information gathered that allows us to see, we expect to see some forced outages that have to do with the gas restrictions out on the system for natural gas units. And we began using the maximum icing potential for our wind forecast. What that means is every day we're not only forecasting what the demand we expect to see on the system, but we're also looking at what the supply is. And with wind and with solar, that needs to be forecast because it can vary quite a bit during the day depending on weather and other conditions. We have tools within ERCOT that we can see what weather is coming and where we expect it to be geographically in Texas, and where there is a lot of wind turbines based on their characteristics, how much icing we'll see. So when there is that icing to the point that wind turbine is not going to be able to operate, we work that into our wind forecast so we know it's going to be coming to the best extent we can based on the anticipated weather. Then internally at ERCOT, we waived COVID restrictions we've had in place for some time. We needed to get additional support on staff on site. We prepared our facilities for extended on-site staffing and also activated remote engineering and support staff as needed. We began to have regular calls with the chief system operators of the transmission owners out on the system. We had 18 of those chief system operator calls with our chief operator over the 8 days. And we requested the TCEQ and Department of Energy enforcement discretion for power plant emissions during this event. ERCOT has had a process for a number of years with the TCEQ where we let the TCEQ know that we have a very high demand event coming, and if we're going to be in emergency conditions, the TCEQ will allow enforcement forbearance. So if a generating unit is really needed to be on the system to avoid an emergency or address an emergency, then the emissions limits on that unit there may be enforcement forbearance, and so that unit can run with less concern about those issues. In this instance, for the first time, with Governor Abbott and Senator Cornyn's assistance, we applied for and very quickly received an order from the Department of Energy. These are very unusual emergency orders, but we were telling the Department of Energy that we really needed all the generation we had on the system. The DOE granted that order and enabled generation owners to opt into that, and if they had EPA emissions limits that needed to be exceeded for the time of the emergency, that this enabled them to operate to give us the maximum power they had available. In addition, the Texas Railroad Commission took action ahead of the event, I think on Friday the 12th, to issue an emergency order that changed the natural gas priority rules that they have. In the winter especially, the first priority for allocation of natural gas is to residential customers, and there is a great deal of gas heating, which causes, that amount of gas that has to be used for residential heating drives a lot of the supply issues that we have in the winter that are not as common in the summer, where there's not so much gas air conditioning out there. So the Railroad Commission recognized that this is going to be an emergency condition. All hands needed to be on deck, and they took the priority of electric generation up higher in their priority rules, so we could address as much of that as possible during the emergency condition. I filed an affidavit supporting that gas priority change with the Railroad Commission, and that order was granted on Friday, the 12th. So all the available generation we had was online as of February 14th on Sunday going into this. And all of these actions have been taken on an operational basis to try to make sure everyone was ready and available. You go to the next slide. And want to talk some about the communications that was going on around this. And back on November 5th, our meteorologist issued his winter outlook for market participants and the public, looking, sort of long-term into the winter, noting a very good chance of an extreme cold weather event during 2020 or late 2020 and into 2021. On November 5th, you can't know exactly what that system is going to be or exactly when it's going to hit, but we saw that the weather conditions did bode well for something large and extreme on the system sometime during this winter. And we tried to notify market participants and the public through our postings that's what we were seeing for the winter time. On February 3rd, our meteorologists warned market participants and the public that we'd see the coldest weather of the year. And those weather updates continued on our website. Our meteorologist provides an update every day on our short-term weather forecast. And so we're moving away from sort of longer-term outlooks for the winter and into more real time. And so on February 8th, we issued an operating condition notice. What that means is we were telling the entities that we communicate with, the generators and the transmission owners, that we expected extreme cold weather. We posted that on our public website. When we issue those operating condition notices, we be sure to share them with the Public Utility Commission so they're aware of what we're seeing and what we're telling the marketplace. And that communication, the communication we do every single day that is critical to the functioning of what ERCOT provides on the system, is primarily focused on talking to the people who are managing the assets on the grid. So communications with transmission owners who we work with generators, with people who are participating in the marketplace, because most days those are not as high stakes communications, but they're really focused on the market participants. And there is a very clearly set out stages of those communications, so market participants know what to expect, and when they see them, they know how to react. So February 8th, we issued that first operating condition notice. I know on February 9th, the board had a meeting. I mentioned at the top that we were seeing the cold weather coming. We anticipated we would be prepared, and didn't really go into a whole lot of other detail because we had already started the communications that you board members are aware of that we do with the market to try to promote readiness all through the system. On February 10th, sort of the next step up, sort of like warnings and watches and, increasing levels of concern, we issued our advisory, again, on extreme weather, posted on the public website, and issued grid condition updates for market media representatives. That is those people who work at the various companies in the market who will be addressing the media so they would know what we were seeing coming the next week. On the 11th, that was stepped up to a watch for a cold weather event. We made hotline calls to market participants. We put out a notice to market participants, and we posted that on our public website as well. Produced a news release on extreme weather that was expected, and did outreach through our social media channels. On the 12th of February, that Friday, same day the Railroad Commission met, the Texas Energy Reliability Council began to have daily meetings. The Texas Energy Reliability Council, or TERC, is a very valuable organization because it brings together electric and gas industry. So there were a lot of issues around gas supply through this event, and leadership people from those industries, including a representative of ERCOT, began daily meetings that went throughout the event to prepare and compare notes. On February 13th, the governor issued a disaster declaration, and the State Operations Center was stood up. There was a news conference there, and we also issued our conservation alert the following day. But during the news conference, Chairman Walker, Chairman Craddock, the governor, Nim Kidd, the Chief Nim Kidd, the head of the State Operations Center, Department of Emergency Management, myself, addressed the various issues we thought we were facing. We were urging conservation, that we saw something very serious coming, and that we could see, because of the huge demand we expected on the system from the storm, the supply of energy be outstripped by the demand. Then on the 14th in the morning, we issued the conservation appeal. We put out news releases, did social media. We had a media briefing that day to try to emphasize the point that conservation was going to be very important because of the major demands on the system we expected. And before I leave this slide, one note, the State Operations Center and Chief Kidd in particular really played an invaluable role. They always do, but we were able to coordinate on a lot of problems that arose through the event with the State Operations Center, in particular with Sean Hazard from the Public Utility Commission, who I'd really like to thank, and bring to bear the resources that the State Operations Center and the state of Texas did bring to bear during this emergency. That was extremely helpful, as it always is, but in this event in particular, I'd like to thank them for their service. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So before I get into the details, just the overview of this event. Record-setting, sub-freezing temperatures, wind chills all over Texas. And as you know, at ERCOT, we often say, in summertime, and this is true in winter too, there are a lot of events that can be managed, fairly easily. If you may have extreme weather in one part of the state, but the weather system is not everywhere, so it doesn't increase the demand everywhere in the state in the same way. As this storm developed, we saw, and before it came in, knew that it was going to go, tip to top of Texas. And that is unusual when a storm can cover the land mass of ERCOT with these sub-freezing temperatures and wind chills. We saw approximately 48.6% of generation forced out at its highest point due to the impacts of the various extreme weather conditions. We'll go into a lot more detail about that in the following slides. The controlled outages were implemented to prevent a statewide blackout. and we'll go into a lot more detail describing why we called those outages and the challenges they pose to the system. But ultimately, we had to limit electric supply because you cannot provide more demand. You can't serve more demand than you have supply, and you've got to keep that system in balance. And the only tools that we had to maintain control and not slip into a blackout in a much worse condition was these outages. Local utilities who were implementing the outages were limited in their ability to rotate the outages because of the magnitude of the generation unavailability, the number of circuits they have to handle with critical loads. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Tremendous service by the local utilities, the poles and wires companies, in implementing the amount of outages that we needed, but it was extraordinary and caused some issues that were certainly extraordinary and very difficult to deal with. On the next slide.
Mr. Magness, this is Chad Seeley. I just want to make sure you're giving board members an opportunity to ask any questions about the slides that you've presented so far.
Good point, Chad. I'm sorry about that. I'll pause here and see if, before we get into the timeline of the event, if there are any questions on what I've said so far.
Mr. Magness, this is Jackie Sargent, General Manager of Austin Energy and Municipal Utility Segment Board Member. When you were talking about communications, I feel that the issue with ERCOT's concerns with regard to this event should have been more broadly communicated at our February 9th board meeting, and that the concerns with regard to the upcoming weather event should have been communicated more specifically. And I feel, as a board member, very frustrated that did not occur, and I just wanted to make that statement.
I understand, Ms. Sargent, and I'm sorry that we did not cover that in more depth. There were a lot of ongoing activities with the folks who are operating the generation and transmission on the grid, where we had those communications focused, but I certainly could have done a better job emphasizing what was coming and had that communication with the board in more depth as well. So I understand your frustration.
Any other
next slide? Oh, I'm sorry. Any other questions?
Yeah, just pausing for a moment, see if there's any other questions or comments. This is Sally Halbert. All right. Thank you.
Okay. If we could go to the next slide. So this is a timeline of the beginning of the event. So it starts at 8 a.m. on Sunday. We did issue the conservation alert and the media appeal. The reason we issued that on Sunday was we did not want to issue a conservation appeal too far ahead of an event because people will remember to conserve if it's coming right at them. If those sit out there for too long, our experience has been that the communication is less effective. So we issued that on Sunday, the 14th. At 10 a.m., the Texas Energy Reliability Council met, strong focus on gas supply concerns and issues that we anticipated as the storm began to roll in. At 1 o'clock, there was a State Operations Center update, news conference, forecasting emergency operations at 2 o'clock that day that we held. At 3:17, we had a watch in effect for projected reserve capacity shortages. By 5:19, there was freezing precipitation that forced transmission outages. Those transmission outages were managed by the transmission owners as well as the ERCOT control room operators, and did not become a large event in the scheme of things, but that was a concern as we got going early. There were wind chill warnings issued as the afternoon came in. This is really when we started to see the storm blow in. And at 7:06 p.m. that night, we set a new winter peak. So more electricity was used on the ERCOT system on a winter's day than had ever been used in history. So the system was supporting the highest demand that we had ever seen in the winter. And we got through that peak, and we were anticipating the morning was going to be very difficult. When we communicated that we saw supply being outstripped by demand, we saw that for a period on Monday morning in our forecast and on a period on Tuesday morning in our forecast. But what we were seeing at that time, we believed we could manage with rotating outages that were not extreme, that would be instituted over a morning peak as energy usage came up in the morning, and then they would be able to end when that peak went down a little bit later in the morning. Same thing on Tuesday morning. Based on the forecast we had, we didn't anticipate emergency conditions for those times, and so we got past that evening peak on Sunday night, and we looked like we were in decent shape, knowing that we had a whole lot more coming at us as the morning peak ramped up. But around 11 o'clock, we started to see challenges. A lot of generation began to drop off, and as the storm system was blowing through the state, and one generator after another reported that they were tripped off, they were not able to operate, and then pretty quickly, we called a watch at 12:12 a.m. That we had reserves less than 3,000 megawatts. That's when we know we're beginning to have serious trouble. Then at 12:15 a.m., we went into energy emergency alert operations level 1 because our reserves went below 2,300 megawatts. At 1:07 a.m., we went into level 2. And then very quickly thereafter, at 1:20 a.m., we went into energy emergency alert level 3. And we instituted rotating outages of over 10,000 megawatts, which is a very large amount to institute in the scheme of things. ERCOT orders those outages. We are seeing the entire system, and in order to maintain the integrity of the system, we will issue those out to the transmission providers, whether Austin Energy, Encore, CPS Energy, CenterPoint, the various transmission providers throughout the state, and ask them to institute those rotating outages. And that's how the outages began that evening. And so ERCOT does direct those orders and then watches the system to see if we can, when we can bring that demand back up. Now, on the next slide, just to drill down into that period.
Mr. Magness, can we
yes.
Mr. Magness, sorry to jump in. This is Sally Hallberg. I just want to make sure the board members or commissioners don't have any questions or comments on this piece.
Sure, I will remember to pause. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Magness, Kevin Gresham, RWE Renewables, representing the independent generator segment. Just a quick question. Were there, going into the event, or even during the event, but going into the event, were there any under frequency disruptions that may have tripped generation offline?
Yeah, Kevin, we haven't seen that. We've sent out requests for information to generators, and I think we'll be able to confirm that for sure when those RFIs are returned. But from what we've seen so far, we don't believe that the under-frequency relay trips were an issue given the time that we were at the frequencies we were. So we don't see evidence of that at this point, but certainly as we gather more information at a detailed level, we'll be able to confirm whether or not that was an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on this one?
All right, thanks.
Okay, so this takes us to 1:23 a.m. as we were in the event on Sunday night or early Monday morning. We entered EEA3. We had a 1,000 megawatts of load shed ordered here at 1:23. And as of this time, as I said, around 11 o'clock is when we really started to see generation come off the system. At this time, we had 35,343 megawatts of generation out at that point. And as you can see in the chart, we were riding along fairly steady, but then began to see additional generation trip off. At another 1,418 megawatts drop off, and another 248, another 329. At that point, we believed that we needed to add additional load shed. We ordered another 2,000 megawatts of load shed at that time, and as the operators were watching what impact that load shed had. Was that load shed managing frequency sufficiently that we could stop adding additional load shed and move forward, continue with where we were? That wasn't what we were seeing. There was an additional 606 that came off, an additional 688 that came off, another 511 megawatts that came off, and at that point we're getting down to the frequency levels where we're in the danger zone. And as you see on the chart, we have a bar there across at 59.4 frequency, and at that level, if you stay at 59.4 for 9 minutes or more, generation units begin to trip off on their own because it becomes unsafe or unstable for those generation units to stay on if we are sitting at that lower frequency for 9 minutes or more. So we sat in that spot for 4 minutes and 23 seconds. We had already ordered a great deal of load shed, but at that point we saw the frequency dip down to its lowest point at 59.302. And at 59.302, we are definitely in a dangerous condition and one that we have to respond to. And there are, rules for what we do in this condition. The steps we took are outlined in federal NERC standards. They're good utility practice, or the actions you have to take to maintain that system frequency, because this is the point where that balance I talked about, if it's going too far out of balance. And if it stays out of balance for too long, as I said, generation units begin to trip off for their own safety, so their generation units aren't severely damaged, and you begin to have issues on the system that take it out of the grid operator's control. And that is what we could not allow to happen. And so as you see, as when we saw the frequency hit 59.302, just above 59.3, an additional 3,500 megawatts of load shed were ordered. We're now up to 8,500 megawatts of load shed ordered. We saw more generation out as we're climbing back on frequency, getting back to 60 hertz, but the only way we could get back to 60 hertz effectively was to continue the large amount of load shed that we instituted, and then we continued to see generation outages. So during that period where we were, at 59.3, we could not stay there long. We could not go lower, or we would have risked a blackout of the entire system. And that is the thing that we cannot allow to happen, because if we have a blackout of the system, the system is out for an indeterminate amount of time, and it's extraordinarily difficult to bring it back. We may still be here today talking about when is the power going to come back on if we had let the system get into that condition. So the load shed that we added was to, as you can see on the chart, get us back up to that 60 hertz level where we could operate safely, and that's where we were, going into Monday morning, in the middle of Monday night. Any questions on this one?
This is Sally Telberg. I would just know this is one of the slides that had the formatting glitch, and I can see why it's needed to be fixed for this. It just used to have the dots on it, so this is much more helpful, and I appreciate that correction. This is an important slide. Any questions or concerns related to it?
Yeah, Chair, this is Sam Harper, board member representing the Consumer Industrial segment. I have two questions, Mr. Magness. One is, how many megawatts of reserves were online when EEA3 was called? And the second question is more just, I think it might be useful for us and the public to clarify the steps of coming back from a black start event. I think there's a lot of confusion about the difference between rotating outages and a black start event and the timeline, and just how serious this dip really could have been. I appreciate that clarification.
Certainly. The amount of reserves at that moment in time, I don't have that number in front of me at the moment. If Dan Woodfin or other ERCOT staff are on the call want to have that specific number, I'll ask them to weigh in. But on the black start, there is a plan that ERCOT has and the market participants train on and drill on for if we go into black start. What does black start mean? That means that the outages that we have are no longer controlled, and generation units have tripped off. There is likely damage on the system, transmission side or the generation side. And the black start means that you're basically restarting the entire electric system. And there are units that we contract with that we ask to be ready in a black start situation, so we can fire them up to really begin the process of rebuilding the grid again. The challenges of this process are pretty immense. You have to bring up units, and then you have to balance some demand on them, because again, you're starting a unit, you have to have some load on the system to balance it to 60 hertz, and you're trying to do that in various parts of your electric system, and maintaining that balance can be very difficult and very challenging, and you have to have a lot of people in the field doing, manual work as well as, automated work, but there's people out doing work. And obviously with the power system down, communications is more challenging. So we have, plans to take this on. We have never had to do this. We never want to do this. And it would be a much more devastating situation for Texas if we ended up here, because it's hard to estimate exactly how long black start recovery would take, because it requires these incremental steps in different parts of the system and then linking together those places in the system to sort of restitch the grid into a place where you can operate it as a whole. So avoiding that situation is why we take the outages, because when we take enough demand off the system, even if we've lost a lot of generation, we can continue to match it. We can continue to operate, around 60 hertz. And during the emergency condition, that was the goal. That's what we had to do, is stay at 60 hertz, even with the large amount of generation that was off the system. So, Mr. Harper, does that answer the question for that part? And I'll pause and see if we have that number on the reserves.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. At the risk of speculating, could you give us and the public an idea of the timeline, the range of timelines that a black start event could take to restore power to all Texans?
We have not had to conduct it, but I think it's safe to say it could be weeks. And depending on the conditions that you're operating under, when you go into a black start condition, it could take longer than that.
Okay, thank you for that.
This is Woody Rickerson. There was 940 megawatts of PRC at that minimum frequency.
Woody, Mr. Rickerson, can you please say what PRC is?
That's a measure of the reserves on the system. That's the trigger level that we use for the EEAs.
Thank you. I just, for the general public and media listening, I think if we can try to keep the acronyms limited, it'd be easier. Thank you for that information. Any other comments on this? I know folks have dealt with black start in other regions. Any other further questions or comments on this slide before we move on?
So this is Ray Hepper, one of the independent directors. And Bill, I don't know if you know, but how many of your black start planned units did you actually lose, which, having lived through the 2003 blackout in the Northeast, losing those units makes it even tougher to get the system back going again, because the resources you need aren't available to you to get restarted, as you described. Do you know how many of your black start units you lost sort of in the Sunday night, Monday morning time frame?
Well, during the entire course of the outages, I can tell you that data. We pay 13 primary units to provide black start service, and what that means is that they have fuel on site. They're ready to start their units from off the grid, basically, to begin to stitch together the system. So we pay 13 units to be ready all the time. 6 of the 13 experienced outages. Those outages ranged from a low of 4 hours to one that went up to 127 hours during the course of the event. Of the 6, 2 had alternate generators, but those also experienced outages. So I think that's the data we have on what we saw with the black start units.
Thank you. That's a little scary and very helpful.
Yeah.
Bill, this is Peter Crampton, independent director. And just on this 2003 blackout that was sustained in the Northeast, one of the things that enabled them to get back up more quickly than perhaps Texas would be able to was the fact that PJM, the largest market in the United States, removed itself from the interconnection of that disaster, and so did not go black. And as a result, PJM was available to provide a substantial amount of inertia to initiate the black start in the Northeast. Can you, is that correct, that the black start in Texas would be more difficult because of its connection in the grid?
Yes, we have to plan for a black start that relies, almost entirely on units in ERCOT. There are some, as you know, Peter, some limited connections to Mexico, some limited connections to the Eastern Interconnection in ERCOT, but that's one of the challenges and why we drill every year as we do to make sure that people are ready to go into that kind of event if we have to.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to suggest we keep moving through the presentation because it may be helpful, too, with some of this to kind of wait for the end for further discussion on topics of interest. Please proceed, Bill.
Okay, just one thing I was intending to add on this slide is, the operating rules that we have for generators and their interface with ERCOT, are very specific about where we can be in frequency. And, if you have under frequency relays, that is, you can, trip the unit if they're activated automatically. When you get to 59.4, there shouldn't be automatic tripping in that case. If you're above 58.4 up to 59.4, you can't stay there less than 9 minutes, more than 9 minutes. So that 4 minute and some period, we couldn't be there very more minutes. If we had stayed there and not done additional load shed, those are the minutes that we would be wasting that would be taking us towards a much more disastrous outcome. Now, we have controls in place to manage that, and we use them. The condition was dangerous, but we knew exactly what to do to manage it. So there are plans, there are safety nets, there are lots of rules we have about how the system works to keep us out of that kind of trouble. But as quickly as this issue came up, we were able to use those tools and manage it, but it did require taking more and more demand off the system to manage it that way. So that's my last note on this slide. This shows you the generation capacity through the event. That is from the 14th on Sunday out to Friday when we went out of emergency operations. You see, when we started on the 14th, we had, going into it, basically, we had 25,000 megawatts of forced outages. That included about 14,000 megawatts of wind and solar. So going in, we knew, as I mentioned earlier, we had icing on wind turbines. There was equipment that, particularly in West Texas, that's not going to be available to us. And we knew that going in and knew how to manage around it if we could. The planned outages that were in effect were very minimal. 2,800 megawatts of planned outages is not a whole lot in the scheme of things. This included what we call seasonally mothballed capacity. That is power plants that are not set up to run except in the summer season. So they were not in a position to turn themselves on quickly. So about 2,800 megawatts there. And the only units that, were on planned outage were ones where the outage was already underway and they were not able to get back on the system because everyone who could got themselves on the system and tried to operate through the storm. So what you see as we go, February 14th into February 15th, Sunday into Monday, there you see that very large increase in the forced outages, which got up, around the 40,000 or rather 50,000 megawatt level there. And, this slide, I think, indicates why the restoration took as long as it did. In other events where we've had gone into rotating outages, say in 2011, the ability of the generation that was forced out to come back didn't take nearly as long as we saw in this situation, and we know because we were working 24 hours a day with the generation owners and their representatives that every effort was being made to fix those units. Some of them had fuel issues and could not come back until those fuel issues were resolved. So if you don't have natural gas fuel, you can't run a natural gas plant. So we saw a lot of fuel issues out on the system. Those who had instrumentation or other equipment failures during the storm coming in, were contending with getting their workers out there on icy roads, trying to manage fixing tube leaks and other problems at plants, in 0-degree temperatures. So the efforts were underway. Those generators were doing everything they could to get back on, but what we saw was through, the 15th, through Monday, through Tuesday, through Wednesday, we're continuing to have to manage the system with a large amount of outages because it was very challenging for generation to get those units back on. Some of them just weren't going to come on until the weather changed. For example, the solar that had icing just was not going to be able to run again until that condition resolved with the temperature increase. So this is why the restoration took as long as it did, why the number of outages had to be maintained as long as it did, because we were fighting every moment of the day to get as much generation back on the system as we could. And as you see by these little peaks and valleys, there were times where generation would come back, get back online, but would have issues and trip. There were some units that stayed on, through parts of the storm, but came off during it. So that was what we were having to manage. And as you see, as the line drifts down to the right, there on the 18th and 19th, that's when we were able to come out of the emergency conditions because as those generation outages decreased, then we were able to add more demand back on the system and still stay in the balance and stay out of a blackout. So at the peak of this event, 48.6% of the generation fleet was on outage, and that is an extraordinarily large number to try to manage when you almost half of the generation that you think is going to be available to you to manage a very difficult situation has its own difficulties and has to come off. And the way we had to manage that was with the continuation of demand reduction and outages. Any questions here?
Mr. Magness, this is Sally Talberg. I have a question about the flow of information between generators and ERCOT with respect to the generators' expectations of resuming service. Can you just elaborate a little bit more, like how that works? And how that plays into kind of estimates on restoration so that the public and emergency responders have a sense of the duration of outages. Can you talk about that?
Yes, the direct communications we have are between control rooms, essentially, that the control room operators in ERCOT are working with their counterparts at the generation units. And we're hearing from them all the time as they're trying to get back on. They're telling us their status. But until we see the generation come back on and stay on, it's very difficult to make any predictions that are meaningful about what we're going to see on the outage side. So as we try to communicate to the public about what we were seeing, the hardest question and the question everyone wanted answered is, when is this going to end? And the answer that we had to continue to give was, we are, fighting, and the generators are fighting to get these units back on. And as those units come back on, we can reduce the number of outages. And that, of course, was not a satisfactory answer to people who have been sitting in the cold. But that was the reality that we were facing, and we couldn't release the outages until we saw sufficient generation. So what we tried to communicate as we went through the event was, at a maximum, we had 20,000 megawatts of load shed, of demand reduction on the system. And when we had enough generation back that we felt confident we could add back and eliminate outages, we would announce that we were able to go down to, say, 18,000 megawatts on outage. We go down to 17,000 megawatts on outage. Now, with the nature of this event, there were times when either, the weather would kick up again, say in a morning ramp, or generation that had come on had other difficulties and had to come back off, and then we'd had to add the load shed back in. And so it was going up and down, which was, of course, extremely unsatisfactory, but that was how we had to manage it in order to maintain the system security during the entire event. So those communications were difficult, and I think certainly the expectation folks had that we could say when this is going to end, it just really was determined by when we could get the generation and the load back in balance.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Chair, this is Sam Harper again, Consumer Industrial Representative. Mr. Magness, I'm looking at that spike in the early morning of the 15th, Monday morning, and I understand generally what caused that spike, but could you help clarify with any specifics you have, whether generator by generator or cause by cause, that the things that contributed to that spike Monday morning in outages?
I think we saw very large generation come off. I think if Woody or Dan have any other specific details, but I think we saw some very large generation outage that we had to contend with, and I have more detail as we go into the slides on resource types and what generation we saw from them and at what times. I mean, that might be the best way to sort of show what we were seeing there.
Okay, I'll wait for that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So this is that slide that shows the generation capacity that was out by fuel type. If you look on the key at the bottom, green is natural gas, and coal is black. You can follow the colors. Nuclear is blue. So here we go, starting the 14th on Sunday at midnight, and we had at that time, just start with natural gas, a little over 10,000 megawatts out, and then as we've discussed in prior slides, we saw this spike as the storm blew hard into the state, and we had an extreme increase in natural gas outages that then hung along there around 25,000 megawatts for quite some time. On the wind, the blue line, that shows we had about 15,000 out, as we indicated earlier, going into the event, and sort of up and down on those outages through the event. There was wind power on the system. I think there were days where it was better and worse. Some of the days, we didn't have real high expectations for the number of megawatts we would see from wind in a winter condition like this. But some of the days we got about what we would have expected in normal conditions, and other days I think we saw less, but that tracks those outages there. The black line lower, the coal outages, you see not as high in the beginning, but they really got higher as the conditions remained in effect, and the storm continued to hit Texas all these several days, and sort of those spiked, and I shouldn't say spiked, but stayed at their highest level, through the 16th into the 17th, and then we saw them ramp down as we got through the week. That bar there that sort of is a little square, that is the nuclear bar. There was an outage of one of the nuclear units in ERCOT, which came off there on the 15th, and obviously those are very large units, so when any of those units are lost, it was a significant loss of generation. And nuclear units have a challenging time once they come off. Coming back on, there's a lot of work that has to be done to get them back onto the system, but we had them back there on the 18th, and there were no further outages on nuclear. The solar, the yellow line you see, not a whole lot expected. We did have solar power that was helpful one of the days of the event, running at a couple thousand megawatts, which certainly helped us as we were trying to get into the effort of bringing at least some of the outages back, but we saw there's the amounts we saw there, not a substantial amount throughout the event, but not a substantial amount of outages compared to others. So really, I think what I'd like to emphasize here is the storm affected every generation type. It caused freezing of wind turbine blades. It caused fuel supply issues as well as instrumentation and mechanical issues for natural gas. It caused those mechanical type issues for coal. We had a nuclear outage. I mean, this affected the system across the board due to the intensity of the weather we saw and the duration of the weather we saw. Any questions here? Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So here we're taking a look at the available generation and the estimated load if we had not done load shed. So what we're trying to indicate here is what we had, and since the load shed reduced the demand, it's going to obviously reduce your peak. So, we don't think we saw the absolute peaks that this winter storm would have brought to us because we had to do the load shed. So after the event, we did a backcast, that is looking at what we anticipated load would have been given the weather and other conditions facing the system. And as you can see in that dotted bar there, that the peaks that we would have anticipated, those are in some instances as high as or higher than the all-time summer peak of 74,820. Texas has never come anywhere close in the winter to using the amount of power that would have been on the system if we had not had to shed load. And, basically, when you have that green bar of generation at the level it was and an anticipated demand where it was, that's basically the amount of load that we could not shed, that we could not serve without additional generation on the system. And then if you go to the bottom, you see the outages there and the amount of those, and that, fairly well matches the amount we had to take off the system in order to maintain stability on the system, given the number of outages we had and the weather we experienced. Any questions?
Hey, Bill.
Yes, sir.
This is Clifton Carni with the cooperative segment. I'm looking at the purple line, and I'm comparing it to the period before the load shed, and I notice it looking really bumpy, lots of ups and downs. And I know this is kind of a backcast, but wouldn't you normally expect the load during a cold weather event, given that everybody across the state's running their heaters, to be less bumpy than that?
Well, I think I have to say it still indicates, the sort of two-hump peak that we have during those winter days, where you see it go up in the morning and then sort of flatten a bit and go back up in the evening, back up in the morning, and so we still, I think, saw that characteristic as we backcast. So that, I think that certainly made a difference in keeping it from just sort of being a flat line.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Great, thanks.
Next slide. So here we just identify some key events that were going on through the week. The effort, if you can summarize it in one way, would be to continue to work with the generation resources to do everything they could do to bring them online so we could reduce outages. That was the activity that the operators across the system were taking all week. Lots of problems identified and created. There was a lot of work done by the State Operations Center, by Chairman Walker, by many others to address issues that arose, whether around fuel supply, specific instances where there were special challenges that needed to be addressed. So a tremendous amount of activity by so many people, but just wanted to highlight a few things here. More than 16,500 control room calls with generators and transmission owners. On a normal week, we'd have about 5,000. So this is just, as you can see, and it should have been, consistent, constant communication amongst the people who are in the field and in the control room working these issues. We had coordinating calls between transmission owners and operations management multiple times daily, kind of drilling into the particular days. On Monday, we saw, up to an additional 24,000 megawatts of net generation unavailable to the extreme weather. The loss of generation got up to 52,277 megawatts. That's, as I said before, approximately 48.6% of the available generation. And 20,000 megawatts of peak load shed on Monday. As I've mentioned, we saw limited gas availability for our gas-fired power plants and issues that were sustained around that. We say multiple DC tie constraints due to neighboring area emergencies. The limited connections that ERCOT has with Mexico and with the Eastern Interconnection do allow the transfer of power between our regions. whether on a commercial basis, on a normal day, on an emergency basis when the power is needed. I think the challenge we had here was that while there were some transfers into ERCOT from the Southwest Power Pool, for example, they were experiencing similar weather. At one point, they went into rotating outages in their region. So there really wasn't much to be called upon because everyone was experiencing the same weather event and the same conditions on the grid. So not a whole lot available, even though we have coordination agreements with all of these counterparts. And, we're trying to help each other as much as we could through the event. There just wasn't a whole lot available to give on their end. Again, we had multiple Texas Energy Reliability Council meetings, coordinating particularly with the gas industry. So going into Tuesday, there was really not much net gain in generation. As I said, as you looked at that chart, you saw some generators coming on, others became unavailable, and continued to work through those challenges. There were decreased numbers of controlled outages during the day. Then they increased during the evening peak. So we tried where we could when we saw enough stability on the system to bring down the amount of outages out there. So the transmission owners could allow more customers to have power back, but then we would see the demand go up as the winter weather continued, particularly in the evening, to get colder, and we'd have to bring some of them back. And so there was just a process during that day of trying to get as much power out to people as we possibly could, but occasionally having to bring some of it back to maintain system integrity. Wednesday, the temperatures began to moderate. This allowed for a reduction in the controlled outages. We saw a small net gain in generation. We're really starting to see, light at the end of the tunnel. Thursday, again, the generation continuing to come up. Then at 12:42 a.m. on Thursday, we were able to cancel the last controlled outage order. And just to stop here for a moment, the way these outage orders work is ERCOT will communicate to the transmission owners, the providers of local services, that we need X megawatts of load shed, and as we'll talk about in a minute, each one of those transmission owners has a share of that to provide. So that is, the order directed by ERCOT for how much we need. And as we got to that time on 12:42 a.m. on Thursday, we were able to say we don't need any more. We can go to zero. And as we did in our public communications, we were trying to keep people updated about, as we were going down to less and less outages needed, just where those numbers were. So we were able to go to zero. But at that point, there were outages that remained on the system. I mean, people didn't see all of their power come up because there was need for manual restoration in a lot of places. And then, during this event, some of the outages that Texans experienced were not the outages that ERCOT directed and that had to be implemented by the transmission owner. Some of them were ice damage or other physical damage, in their neighborhoods that caused them to be out. And, the transmission providers had to go out, distribution providers had to go out and fix those as they needed to physically. So there was a period of time where we saw a zero required outage amount from ERCOT direction, but everyone was out there doing their work to get those back. In addition, large industrial facilities that were off, those coming back onto the system. So it didn't go from 0 to 1. It took some time to get the restoration taken care of, and we wanted to be sure that we were operating the system safely in that transition. And that transition period on Thursday continued to be risky as the rest of the week had been, because we might continue to see disruptions in supply. So Friday, around 9 a.m., we went out of emergency alert level 3. That's the orders for rotating outages. That's where those come in. We went down to level 2, and by 10 a.m. down to level 1, and we're able to go to normal operations at 10:35 on Friday. We have been in normal operations both on the grid and in the markets since that time. And, using electricity in ERCOT is a lot more like it was, on about February 10th than it was during this emergency situation. And, one thing I want to note there, if you don't maintain control of the system, even with the difficult choices that had to be made about maintaining such large amounts of outages, you don't have that opportunity to just turn everything back on and make it normal again. And that's what we were able to maintain. It just took an awfully long time, and it required so much sacrifice of so many people. One thing I want to mention before I leave the slide, though, one of the things that we have been looking back at is, I mentioned that Department of Energy order earlier that enabled generation to stay on the system that might otherwise have had to back down because of EPA regulations. Looking back, we believe that order, which Governor Abbott and Senator Cornyn were very helpful in getting the DOE to push through very quickly. About 30 units were able to take advantage of it. 25 gas units and 5 fuel oil units. We estimate that about 1,776 megawatts became available due to that order. So the actions taken to advance that DOE order did really pay off, and additional capacity was available to the system during the difficult times. Any questions here?
Hi, Mr. Magness. This is Vanessa Anasetti Para, IREP Director. I do have a question with regards to the 12:42 a.m. event outlined on Thursday, February the 18th. Could you confirm that that is the same as saying that there was no more load shed required?
We did not send additional load shed orders, but we remained in EEA 3 because we believed that we were still in a transitional condition. There was still significant weather. There was still an opportunity that we would backslide and get back into outages. And once we got to that ability to say we had zero, we were very determined to stay at zero and allow the transmission owners to do the work they needed to do. So outages were still in effect because the power was not back on for people. So during that time, that transitional sort of runway back to normal was really critical to our progress in getting out of the event altogether.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other questions here, then I want to address a few issues that have come up as everyone has discussed what we saw last week, and obviously many issues ought to be discussed, need to be discussed. I think will be certainly as the legislature takes up this issue. And I just wanted to highlight a few that have come up the most and give you a sense of where we are on those. So if you go to the next slide, weatherization has been mentioned quite a bit, and just to sort of, again, level set where things stand on weatherization, at least in ERCOT's role and participation in it. Generation owners and operators aren't required to implement a minimum weatherization standard or perform exhaustive reviews every winter of vulnerability. No entity, whether PUC or ERCOT, has the rules in place to enforce compliance with weatherization plans. It is in the interests of generators who want to be running, especially when our market provides high prices for their performance during scarcity, to undertake those activities. But I just note, I think there's been a lot of discussion about whether there are mandatory standards, and at this time they're not. In 2011, in response to the event then, the PUC did amend its rules and on weatherization and the submission of weatherization plans, and authorized ERCOT to conduct site visits to review compliance with weatherization plans that were filed with the PUC. We have been doing spot checks ever since then that review weatherization plans. We go out to plant sites, verifying the personnel are following the plan. If we have recommendations based on whether the PUC requirements, lessons learned from other areas or other events, we work with the generation owners to inform and educate and try to understand what they're doing out there and suggest those best practices. In addition, we review detailed plant records and look at those as part of our spot checks and make suggestions, make recommendations. But really the only entity that can confirm a plant is fully weatherized to any particular standard, and that standard may vary depending on where you are in the country and what's necessary. Are the owners and operators of the plants that have to go out there and do that physical work. In addition, we hold a workshop every year with the Texas Reliability Entity on weatherization ahead of the winter with generation owners, reviewing lessons learned, things that folks are seeing out on the system, changes, new technologies that are available, and that forum is conducted each year as we go into the winter season. I want to look at the comparisons to February 2011. If you go to the next slide, the last time we had any rotating outages on the ERCOT system.
Hey, Mr. Magness, I just want to jump in with one question on this one on weatherization. So the 80 per year, that's units out of like 680 total units?
Yes.
ERCOT? Okay, and then who decides that sampling approach? Like the number?
The ERCOT, sure. The ERCOT staff who participate in those weatherization checks make those determinations, and I think the factors we tend to look at are go to a new unit. If a new unit is just coming on the system, you want to encourage them to start the right way, and so you take a look at those new units, and then if we've seen, sort of in a risk-based way, we've seen certain units or certain events at types of units that we want to go take a look at and offer the information we can and recommendations we can, we'll choose those. So it's really more of a, risk-based, where are we going to do the most good with the checks that we can undertake each year. And I really accentuate, these are not inspections. There's not, we don't have regulatory authority to, issue fines or levy penalties around this issue. So it really is a way to collaborate with the industry to work on weatherization and ensure they're doing what they need to do. But if, they're not mandatory standards at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this or comments? All right, thanks. Please proceed.
All right, next slide. So comparing 2011 to 2021 and what we saw in these two events, this shows you from the weather perspective. I know it's a fairly busy slide, but if you look on the left, there's February 2011, the critical days for the 1st through the 5th. We had rotating outages on February 2nd. And so you can see there we just picked DFW area, Austin and Houston. And you see the temperatures were in the 20s down. Sort of the lowest we saw was in the DFW area at 13 degrees. The number of hours that were at or below freezing in DFW was the coldest at 101. Austin had about 69 hours at or below freezing, and Houston 34. Now compare that to February 2021. Of course, the operative days, Sunday the 14th through Thursday the 18th. Huge differences, as you can see on the chart. The lowest temperature in the DFW area was -2, and they experienced 140 hours at or below freezing. Austin, 162 hours with the low of 6 degrees, and then 13 degrees in Houston at the low point, and about 44 hours under freezing. So that 13 degrees as the highest range in the large metro area at the coldest point of this event. It's about as cold as it got in 2011 at the minimum. So a much different weather system, and as you can see from the shape of the curves there, temperatures did not come up very far or very fast. We hung in this cold period for longer than we did in the 2011 event. Any questions here? If you go to the next slide, just addressing some more, electric system issues on what we saw in 2011 versus 2021. And again, I think you can see from the data, these are very different events. The maximum generation capacity that was forced out at any time, while it was 14,000 in some in 2011, it was over 52,000 in 2021. Just a dramatically larger amount that was forced out during the event. We saw, the ramp into EEA, the generation forced out 1 hour before the start of it, much larger. The cumulative generation capacity, those cumulative generation capacity and generator numbers, we took from the NERC report on the 2011 event, used their methodology for coming up with that cumulative total for the event, and replicated that for what we saw in 2021. And again, you see, significantly larger numbers on the outage that was out through the event. The D-rates of natural gas, again, we talk about the natural gas supply issues. When we say a D-rate, that means the unit cannot run as much as its full output because it doesn't have the sufficient fuel, so it's derated. Again, comparing 1,200 megawatts of those gas issues in 2011 with over 9,300 in 2021, so a much more significant impact from fuel issues. The lowest frequency we hit was 59.58 in 2011. As we talked about before, we got down to about 59.3, a much more, and got there very quickly, as you see from, the events leading into the EEA declaration. The maximum load shed was 4,000 megawatts in 2011 and 20,000 in 2021. So that is the amount of load we had to come off the system in order to keep it in balance was just dramatically larger and like nothing we certainly have ever seen before in ERCOT. Then the duration of the load shed request is the most powerful and I think most discouraging. That while we had on February 2nd about 7.5 hours of outages, we had 70.5 hours during the course of that week, and those are the times that the people who were suffering from these outages were in the cold, and so much of the human suffering and the tragedy we saw was associated with just having to be in that condition for so long to maintain the safety of the system. And then our estimated peak load, you see, if we hadn't done load shed, 59,000 in 2011, and over 76,000 we believe we would have seen if we hadn't done load shed. That is higher than the all-time summer peak in Texas. This was an extraordinary event. Any questions?
Bill, this is Clifton Carney.
Yes, sir.
I'm with the electric cooperative segment again. So a lot of scary numbers on this slide, in particular peak load going from 59 to 76. So that shows the tremendous growth we've had in the state since 2011. But when you combine that with the cumulative gas deration due to supply issues from 1,200 to 9,300, that's another 8,000 megawatts. Can you describe what you're hearing from the various market participants? Was it well freeze-offs, getting their transportation cut, just couldn't find the gas? That really jumps out at me.
Yeah, Clifton, I guess I'd have to say we heard all of the above, and we're going to get, more detail on the conditions the generators face from the request for information we put out as we continue to do the post-event analysis. But, just as I was asking as we were in the event, how much of this is supply, how much of this is, instrumentation or other equipment type issues, and at times it seemed about 50-50. Not a scientific number, but, it was just a whole lot of supply issues, and we were hearing about freeze-offs. We were hearing about transportation, both for gas, pipelines. We also heard about transportation for fuel oil coming in because of the conditions on the roads. I think we'll find that all of those conditions played a significant role in keeping the natural gas units from being able to run at full capacity due to fuel. Any other questions?
Bill, this is Jackie Sargent again with the segment.
Yes.
And, as I look at these numbers and I, think about the modeling and reporting that ERCOT does, as we continue to experience hotter summers and colder winters, I think that we are going to need to consider some extreme cases, because what we saw went well beyond anything in the SARA report that was done and came out for this winter season. And I am concerned that for planning purposes, making sure that market participants have the best information to be able to support the system and take care of our customers who were so badly harmed through this event, that we're really going to have to take a deeper look at how we do those assessments and how we consider this extreme weather and take that into account going forward.
Yeah, Jackie, the short answer is I totally agree. I think, we try to we do create extreme scenarios in our seasonal assessments that look at, here's what we're expecting based on anticipated weather, and we're always doing that weather forecast ahead. So while Chris Coleman can tell us in November, expect a large storm, it doesn't get down to the level of specificity of when you're close to the event. But we look at what we expect. We look at, well, what if we lose a lot of wind generation? What if we lose? What if we have extreme load and losses of generation? But you're absolutely right. I mean, we saw something here that outstripped any extreme scenario. And I think the challenge with these forward-looking assessments always is you want to provide market participants and the public generally a realistic picture. So you don't want to predict something that's so far out that it's not taken seriously. But this is the kind of event that moves the goalposts, number one, so that we have to know that we could see another February 2021 event when we look at extremes, even though this, as you can see in this chart, as extreme, way past extreme from looking at the past. And I think that notion of finding ways to model those extremes that take into account things we continue to see is just something we're going to have to look at to continue to provide the best information possible that's meaningful to the challenge we're facing.
This is Sally Talberg. I feel like so far what I've seen of this slide deck, this slide 19 is just really staggering. And I appreciate the context from the 2011 event. I'm sure it took a lot to kind of pull all this together. But, I do think it underscores Ms. Sargent's point about extremes and the modeling. And Texas is not alone in this regard. We found in Michigan with negative 40-degree polar vortex conditions and a massive gas storage facility that caught on fire, that all the models across both gas and electricity and the assumptions need to be recalibrated. And I could see, ERCOT leading in this because you do have these extreme weather conditions. Any other comments or questions?
Sally, this is Peter Crampton, Independent Director, and I'd just like to echo the importance of forecasting going forward. And I know this has been an important initiative in ERCOT for the last couple of years to beef up the forecasting efforts of, with the introduction of more renewables. And looking forward, forecasting is going to be absolutely critical to the market participants meeting the supply and demand challenges.
Well, and to put that in a little bit of context, traditionally, you did load forecasting. You looked at weather, you looked at economic conditions, you looked as far out as you were going to look in that particular forecast to estimate what you'd see on the demand side. And you didn't forecast generation. You didn't forecast supply because, you turn power plants on and you turn them off and you move them up and down as needed to meet the demand. The emergence of intermittent resources, wind and solar in particular, as Peter says, we have had to be a leader in working with vendors and doing a lot of work ourselves to develop wind forecasts that can look historically and give us a sense of what we should see, what times a day, because the way the wind blows, varies tremendously. It varies geographically. It varies certainly in different weather conditions. And to start to understand those patterns so that we can understand what we're seeing and how to predict it, particularly in the shorter term when it's going to be critical to keeping the system in balance. Same thing with solar, and we've taken those efforts there. Late last year, we created a new director-level position and reorganized some of our team to create a group solely focused on forecasting, both of the load side and of the supply side, to just continue to advance that, because it's absolutely right. As the system becomes more volatile and predictable with these different kinds of supplies on it, that's essential. It's already essential, but we just have to get better and better at it to provide the kind of information that folks need, both in real time and for planning purposes. If there are no other questions here, on the next slide, we really take it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Sally, or Bill, this is Mark Carpenter, Investor-Owned Utility Group. Clearly, we've got some opportunity in the forecast area. In our particular market, to think that we could have this deep of a weather event with everything else working perfect and not have a reasonable amount of some form of controlled load shed on a rotating basis, I think we're probably missing what our market really does, because this was extreme throughout the state. Had everything been perfect, but it would not have been near the impact. It would have been much more customer friendly, manageable. But another point I'd like to make, Bill, and two things really, is I want to amplify Sam's comment about black start that he kind of mentioned. And we've never done a black start, and I'm not sure that the general public recognizes all the things that go away. I mean, there's not going to be any community. The cell phones aren't going to be working deep into a black start. Just lots and lots of other things are just not going to be available. And under the very best scenario, it's days, and under worse scenario, it's longer. But that said, I was in the control our operations center the entire time of this event, and your NERC certified operators, they perform their tasks exactly the way they're developed and trained, exactly the way we practiced, and we had to address things that were significantly deeper and much more long in direction than we had ever anticipated. Your team, your operations team, did a fantastic job of keeping us from going black, and I don't think people realize what going black really means. But your guys did one heck of a job, and we need your operations group. They did a good job, and they should be commended, Bill.
Well, thank you, Mark, and I'm proud of the work those guys did. Throughout the week to manage the challenges and difficulties that just took so long to remedy that I've been referencing. But I think they did this by the book. They drill. There are federal reliability rules. There are practices, and these guys train for conditions like this all the time. Guys, I say men and women, train for these conditions. And to make the decision they did to reduce demand, to shed load as they did, as quickly as they did, and continue to manage that, especially Sunday night, was extremely professional and I think courageous. And they too, as we went through the week, knew the challenges it put Texans under. And I was in our control center all week too, and I think that consciousness that what was going on here was a public safety threat to our neighbors and friends and families was on everybody's minds every moment. One thing I'll say about black start, totally agree. I think, I guess the simplest way I can put it is everything that was lost last week, you would have to compound it because over time you would, you'd lose more and more things that relied on, say, stored power. I really feel like if we had not been able to control the situation as difficult as it was, we wouldn't be here today talking about what we're talking about. We'd be talking about how we're going to restore the system. Next slide. Yeah, this next slide really gets into the sort of dynamics of the load shed. Just to sort of put this in context, over on the left, you see those are the transmission operators in the ERCOT region. It's a mix of private companies, cooperatives, municipal utilities, sort of all across the board. A lot of the folks you've heard speak today, Mark from Encore, Jackie from City of Austin, were in the unenviable business of managing an enormous amount of load shed on their systems. And as you can see, these percentages, these are established ahead of time. This is not something that was done on the fly. It's basically, based on size of their systems, about how much percentage of the megawatt load shed they have to take. And those are established ahead of time. People do drills. They know what they got to do. They know what the percentage is. So when the ERCOT operators say, we need to have 1,000 megawatts of load shed on the system. Everyone is prepared, and they have to go find those circuits that they can take off and reduce demand based on that directive. And one of the biggest challenges, and I think, well, I'll say two things about this. One, as we shed the amount of load we did, and you can see that spike up on the chart on the right, that we went up to 10,000 and with not in very much time had to go all the way up to 20 and then move around there around 20 and 15,000 megawatts out. Sunday night, early Monday morning when we called the outages, there was still an anticipation that these would be rotating outages. We had never had outages in an emergency condition that could not be of the amount that they can rotate. And just to oversimplify it, if you are one of the utilities implementing these outages, there at a certain amount you can say it's going to be in neighborhood A for 2 hours, then I can move it to neighborhood B, and the neighborhood A guys can get back on. And if it lasts longer than that, we can move it somewhere else. When you get to 20,000 megawatts, or even not that high, what we heard from the transmission owners in the middle of the night and into Monday morning was, there's not many more places we can shed this load. Each of the transmission owners has a well-developed plan for how they'll implement rotating outages when we have to order them. Those plans try to, take care of critical care facilities, say hospitals, so that there are circuits that serves a hospital. You want to try to avoid ever allowing that to be one that is participating in a rotating outage. So in order to protect public safety to the maximum extent possible, the transmission owners have those plans in place, and the amount of load shed that was required, it put them in a position where they were not able to rotate. Now, this is not true everywhere. There are some places where rotating outages, we've heard, continue to work because of population sizes or whatever it was. But in some of the largest metro areas, the amounts required were so large that they could not move them. And not being able to move them meant that for this period on that right side, when we had a lot of load shed, some customers were stuck in that load shed for the entire time. And that's where so much of the harm and damage came from. And this is something we have to figure out. We have always, when we have had to do controlled load shed in the past, we've been able to do rotating outages. We call them rotating because they have the capacity to move around. We call them outages because they're not a blackout, they are an outage. It was very challenging for us, and I think we have to look back and reflect and do better in the way we were communicating as we went out of the middle of the night Monday and into the day Monday, and began to realize with our interactions with the transmission owners that they were not going to be able to rotate these effectively in a lot of places. And all of the language we've used, all the messaging we've used through the years, when we talk about EEA3, when we talk about emergency load shed, we talk about rotating outages. And now we were trying to turn on a dime and say, well, okay, we see they're not rotating. These are controlled outages. They are still under control, but they're having this impact of not being able to roll in some places, not everywhere. So that is a challenge. Not just a challenge for the transmission owners. It's a challenge for all of us in the industry because, last week and today, we don't have an effective way to get the transmission owners out of that box if we have to require that much load shed for a long period of time. So that's one of the issues we've certainly identified to work on. In addition, the messaging, the public messaging around that, if we could have reacted more quickly and understood we were going to be, not in a rotating outage situation in a lot of places, we could have communicated that sooner. It was a very dynamic and fluid situation, and as we understood that, we had to change that messaging, and I know it confused people and frustrated people, and I acknowledge that, and that's an area where we've learned that this can happen. This hasn't happened before, and I think the reason we probably have not seen this phenomenon before is if a system has to shed that much load, there's a high likelihood it may have slipped into blackout. And even though we were in this historically extreme condition, we didn't go into blackout, but we had this problem that we hadn't seen before that had a terrible impact on people's lives. So we have to figure this one out. And I know as policymakers talk about it, that's certainly on their minds. But I got to say, the transmission owners here did a tremendous job. We were asking them to shed load. We were asking for restoration as soon as we could. And in many cases, this requires, a physical activity by, folks who have to roll out on trucks to do it. The directives that we gave, obviously from all we've said about frequency, have to be implemented very quickly, very efficiently. And the transmission owners did that. And at the same time worrying that we may be getting into a condition where, they wouldn't be able to shed any more load. And then what will we do? Tremendous work by the folks and the transmission owners to implement the things that had to be done to keep us out of that black start condition that Mark was talking about. Any questions here?
Bill, this is Jackie Sargent from the municipal segment again, and I appreciate that you brought this topic up, that you are recognizing that there are significant challenges, and for utilities that had to drop over 30% of their customers during this unprecedented weather event, it created a humanitarian crisis. So I want to find a solution to this problem. It's imperative that we do. People in Texas should not have to endure such hardships, or anywhere for that matter, in 2021. And so we've really got to roll up our sleeves and solve this problem.
Yeah, again, Jackie, I totally agree. And it's one of those issues that I think is going to take an industry-wide commitment because it doesn't just affect you. It doesn't just affect the transmission owners who, have to implement these outages. It affects, our ability to be able to maintain system security and in these extreme events. It affects everybody on the system, and it affects, most importantly, the people who we serve. And they were not well served for those days when the outages could not move. Next, I'd like to just take a look at, there's been a lot of discussion again about the recommendations that came after the 2011 event. Just want to highlight some. I know we'll have a lot more discussion as we go through the post-event analysis, but there was a report that NERC published after the February 2011 event, had recommendations applicable to ERCOT. Several things that we did in response to those recommendations over the years have been to implement this seasonal assessment of resource adequacy. That's this report that we referenced earlier that we put out every season that says, here's the generation we think we're going to have on the system for the season. Here's the demand we're expecting. We run extreme scenarios on it, or what we believe were extreme scenarios on that based on history in Texas. And that report has provided a lot more awareness of the more near-term challenges that we'll face going into particular seasons. We did the weatherization process I've already mentioned, and working with generators on that. We added some additional staff in our control room, a shift engineer who can be right there on site 24 hours a day with our operators to run studies that are needed to look at various conditions on the transmission system as we're operating it, and maintain margins for safety as events occur every single day on the grid. And a resource reliability desk, which really is a more specific focus on intermittent resources and how we operate the system with the gyrations we see from sometimes the intermittent resources coming on and off the system. We modified our ancillary services procurement so we can go out and get more ancillary services when we anticipate severe weather. On the gas coordination issues that certainly were noted in 2011, we initiated a gas-electric working group, just a group of industry participants in ERCOT who we try to convene meetings with gas suppliers and the electric companies to discuss issues, particularly around gas supply. We don't have any in sort of enforcement or regulatory authority there, but thought it was important to convene those meetings and establish better contacts between the two industries where we could. We modified a survey that we send to natural gas generators each year that collects fuel switching capability. In preparation for winter, fuel switching, basically some units are able to go from gas to oil or oil to gas, and that can be very important if you have gas supply issues in the winter. And so we ask the gas generators each year going into winter how they're situated as far as being able to manage that. Then we changed rules recently, just a couple years ago, on withdrawing approved resource outages or generation outages if we see severe weather. This time, as I mentioned earlier, we saw just about everything that could come back seemed to come back and try to participate in the market to serve during the storm. So there was we didn't really have, there was maybe 50 megawatts that could have been procured, but not a material amount that we needed to ask people to cancel or postpone those outages, which is very disruptive for the generators. And we had to have a situation like this, I guess in March of year before last. It was disruptive, but we used that authority, and then we've gone through and sort of made that process more formal so we can use it in the future. And this isn't all the recommendations. This is highlights of some of the major things we feel like we undertook. I know we'll be discussing recommendations either legislature or elsewhere, but I just wanted to highlight these. Any questions here? Okay, if we go to the next slide, I think, as you can see, I really tried to focus on the grid event and the emergency event and the outcomes. Obviously, in ERCOT, pricing, since we run an energy-only market, is always critical to the functioning of the market and to the provision of reliability. We have scarcity pricing that when we are in an emergency, we essentially take to its cap, so that generators have every incentive to be there. I think the pricing this time was further, was I think more imperative because of the complicated situation with gas prices. As gas prices shot up and the supply picture changed so dramatically for generators that they could not rely on the scarcity pricing mechanism to recover those costs and their other costs, it may have been a much more difficult situation. The commission stepped in early in the event and took an action to make clear that the prices should stay at 9,000 while we're in the EEA status, and that was helpful and I think productive for sending the right signals to keep as much generation on the system as we possibly could. But of course, this did have dramatic impacts on the average real-time or system-wide pricing, as you can see on the box or on the left or on the right. Average prices over $6,000 for the entire period. Compare those to where we were this year in January, $21 a year ago in February, $18 and $17. So obviously, a lot of economic consequences that come with the market and scarcity pricing. Carrie Bivens, our independent market monitor, is lined up, I think, to speak to you in a few minutes. So I think I'm going to leave the pricing and market implications for Carrie for the moment. So we're going to discuss financial impacts after I finish speaking. We have our CFO, Sean Taylor, and our Vice President of Commercial Operations, Kanano Gelman, lined up to speak to you about where we stand with the response on the economic issues that have come out of the grid issues. So if we could go to the next slide. One last topic. I know Chairman Tallberg sent a letter to the board asking us to cover specific topics, and we've endeavored to cover all those in this presentation. The last was to look at hedging by market participants, the risk mitigation measures that they took going in. And, we have limited visibility into hedging outside of the markets, that we're operating. And there are commodities exchanges and bilateral contracts that ERCOT doesn't have visibility to. And I don't know that we need to, those private market transactions. But with the information we do have available, the level of energy hedging by the load-serving entities, those, whether retail electric providers, municipals, co-ops who serve customers, varied from fairly long hedges to fairly short relative to the physical load. You could also this maybe varying by operating day, even for the same entity, depending on what their strategies were for risk mitigation going into this winter. Those positions could have been affected by load reductions from the load shed, from other losses of load, as well as through loss of generation or deratings that did not allow units to run as they expected when setting hedges. So a lot of factors there, but we certainly were seeing hedging activity, but don't have full visibility to the full extent of it. And I think as we continue through the analysis of the event, I think the board can learn more about that market response as we go through.
Any questions on this item for further comment? I know you're almost done, Bill.
This is Nick Fehrenbach, Consumer Board Member. I realize that we don't have complete visibility into the hedging, but Bill, can you give us sort of an idea of magnitude? We know that the generation online during the peak event was in the 50 megawatt range, but do we know how much energy was actually traded through the real-time market, and what percentage of that total online generation was somehow procured through, whether it was day ahead or bilateral contracts? I'm not concerned how, but when we had the real-time market at that $9,000 a megawatt, do we know what percentage of the energy was actually trading through the spot market?
I don't have that percentage data in front of me, Nick, to pass along to you. I'm about to pass along the mic here to Kanan and Sean, and if they have any insights on that, I'd ask them to address that question directly as they begin their presentation. So I'll ask them to handle that one. With that, Chairman Tallberg, I think I can turn it over to Sean Taylor and Kanan O'Gelman. I wanted to make one note, sort of logistics note. Kanan and Sean will speak. We did get some submitted written questions that once Kanan and Sean are done, I would like to go through and read. Some of them have been answered by my presentation or will be answered by theirs, but they were submitted in advance. We wanted to respect that and provide answers to those questions. So I'll just walk through those before Kerry Bivens, but after Kanan and Sean make their presentation.
Okay, let me just pause here, though, on item 2.2 with the presentation to see if there's any, after going through this whole discussion, if there's any questions or comments for Bill.
Sally, this is Peter Crampton, Independent Director. I just wanted to echo something that Mark Carpenter mentioned with respect to the importance of black start avoidance, because I think it's really important that the public understand this. ERCOT was flying a 747. It had not one but two engines experience catastrophic failure, then flew the damaged plane for 103 hours before safely landing in the Hudson. In my mind, the men and women in the ERCOT control room are heroes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Sally, this is Jackie Sargent from the municipal segment. As we're looking at where we are right now and the immediate issue in front of us are really concerns about liquidity of the market. Mm-hmm. And there is a significant need to get the settlement and finance teams together to look at and potentially develop an alternative settlement process or processes specifically for this event, so that we don't put strain on credit requirements and that we can maintain the liquidity of the market. And I hope that we'll be hearing something about that.
And I think we can cover that as part of 2.3. Anything else? Thank you.
Yeah, Chair.
Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Nick Fehrenbach, Consumer Board Member. Just for Bill, I want to sort of confirm what I believe I heard in your presentation, and I think it would be helpful to clarify maybe some for the public that's listening into this meeting. ERCOT sort of manages and controls the transmission grid, but ERCOT does not have visibility into the individual distribution networks, and when ERCOT requested load shed, it's, as my understanding correctly, it's the individual transmission distribution utilities that sort of have the discretion and requirement to figure out how to shed their load ratio share of that load, and that's really outside of our control and more at the T&D level where individual feeders or circuits are decided how they are shed and which ones get rotated. Is that correct? Am I missing something?
No, Nick, it's correct. I mean, our role is to be observing and, maintaining the security of the entire ERCOT grid. And when we see that on a system-wide basis, not on a local basis, sometimes you have outages on a local basis for various reasons that the local utility manages. But when we have to do this system-wide, basically statewide in ERCOT directive of load shed, we, as I was saying earlier on the slide, we communicate that through established processes to the transmission owners. They receive those instructions, and they have plans in place that I'm sure they all drill on and review regularly about how that load shed can be implemented in their local area. We wouldn't presume to know the local conditions on their distribution systems, and that we trust them and they deliver on that. But yes, it's their plans that dictate how they have to manage those situations when we tell them that we need them.
Hi, Bill. This is.
Hi, is that Lori?
Yes.
Hey, Lori, you're kind of breaking up.
Okay.
You could start again. Thank you.
Closer to my computer here. This is Lori Cubbles. I'm representative of the segment for the residential and small commercial consumers. And you described this earlier, and kind of, sort of spinning off of what you described or how you answered just now. ERCOT conducts or issues out load shed instructions to the various utilities based on load ratio share. And you may have explained this earlier, but for the public's benefit, can you explain a little bit about what that actually means, and maybe give some comparisons so that the public out there can understand how that's done, and whether or not, if you can shed a little bit of light on this, are there utilities out there that have different customer class profiles that may have been impacted differently with those directions from ERCOT?
Yeah, Laurie, I think those plans are, established and maintained by the transmission owners, and as we've talked about, have certain restrictions on what they can do for critical carry areas or other things. And again, I wouldn't presume to speak to how those are implemented. We rely on them to implement the plans they have in place and drill on, and they did that. And they, brought load back when we were able to bring load back. Beyond that, it's not an issue I can address from the ERCOT perspective because, we hand it off to those partners and they carry that ball.
Any other comments and questions on this?
Yeah, Chair, this is Sam Harper, Consumer Industrial Representative again. I'm very curious, Bill, and we may learn more about this in the coming days, but we're just trying to understand how much of the outages were related to winterization, instrumentation, mechanical issues at a generator, and how much in megawatts or duration was related to gas supply. So I'm curious for anything you have to say about that now, and I think you've already touched on it, but anything else you could say about that now, and that's just that I'll wait for more information in the coming days.
Yeah, Sam, I can't give you any percentage breakdown. Just anecdotally, as we were in the event, we were hearing about lots of supply issues, and again, I don't know the exact number. I think as we get these requests for information in from generators for post-event analysis, we'll have more, real data because they're the ones who experienced this and had to manage the problem through the week. So I think we really have to wait that information, which I'm sure they're developing, and look at it then.
All right, last call. Okay, thank you. This is really a chance just to hear what happened and begin the conversation. But I think, there'll be further work ahead in terms of defining the board's role and some further inquiries. The financial issues that Jackie mentioned are incredibly urgent and very complicated. We're going to hear about that next from ERCOT staff and the market monitor. I want to take a 5-minute break. But before we do that, just want to reiterate that we're not having a closed session for this meeting. So in terms of next steps, we'll take up item 2.3, hear about the financial matters with some specific questions from market participants that have been posed. And then we don't at this time have anything planned for open business, but that's the last item on our agenda before we adjourn today. So let's come back at 12:35.